Hello and welcome everyone, it is me, the Lover, awesome support to do this back for you with another deck profile, and today we are going to take a look at my current Dracotail list. Finally decided to actually pick up something competent, and yeah, let's dive right into it. I don't think this is going to be like a shocking, revolutionary list by any means, but I just want to talk about these cards because they are incredibly cool. Starting off, I think, of course, with 3 Dracotail 5 mana. She's great because during the main phase, she is a quick effect polymerization for a dragon or spellcaster fusion, which means you can also use this on your opponent's turn, basically as a hand trap, which does provide quite a bit of value, especially once we talk about like a couple of the other Dracotail names and the fusions. Cool thing about the Dracotail archetype is that, as its mechanism of fixing the kind of inherent like minus of the fusion mechanic, every Dracotail monster, when it is fused away and hits the graveyard, allows you to set a Dracotail spell trap from your deck, which of course gives you an incredible amount of just like searching and getting to the things you want, and also, of course, gives you the ability to kind of recoup the losses you made on your fusions. So yeah, 5 mana, of course, great card. Not only something that helps you dodge like targeted interaction, but also gives you like that fabled turn 0 potential. Then we have 3 Lucius here. Lucius is pretty simple compared to 5 mana, but having, a normal summon that gives you the ability to search any Dracotail monster is pretty powerful. Especially since Lucius gets you to a way to fuse in 5 mana, which is pretty huge, because if you can fuse in this deck, you can play, and that's kind of the cool thing about it. And then Lucius, of course, also has the classic Dracotail effect of, when he's fused, setting a Dracotail spell trap from the deck, which is very nice. So then, yeah, I guess, unsurprisingly, we're also playing 3 Malulu. Yeah, Molulu is basically, as many people put it, a Cartesia. On field, you can quick effect during the main phase fuse into a Dracotail fusion from your with materials from hand or field. I think even including this guy. Oh, you don't even have to include this guy, so that's quite cute. But the cool part about Malulu is you can summon him off with seals, gives your deck like a slight bit more, layer, gives your end boards, a slight bit more layers. And the nice part about the dragon-typed Dracotail main deck names is that if they are fused, they usually have a bonus effect. In Malulu's case, that is, you can negate an opponent's monster on resolution. All of these don't target, which is quite potent and does help this deck, pick apart boards quite efficiently, which I feel like is the unique strength of the Dracotail engine. It's not only, the good grind game. The turn 1 boards are good, but, not, nothing crazy. But the deck's in-engine tools to like go second are very nice, and something that I've come to appreciate quite well. I think there's very few decks in the game where I do not feel terrible about like opening all engine going second, and this is one of them. But yeah, moving into the next dragon-typed Dracotail, we have 2 copies of Urgula. I'm playing 2. I think in terms of like the Dracotail lineup, you're playing like 3 of each, like, of the previous ones of each ultra rare essentially, and then, you can choose to play 2 Urgula and then usually 1 Pan, but I've also seen lists with 1 and 1. I do like Urgula quite a bit, because not only is she a great bit of recursion, but also spell and trap removal. Similar to Molulu, since she's a dragon, she has a bonus effect of Fused, and that is popping a spell trap on the field. And Urgula has a great recursion effect in the graveyard, and that is that you can put her to the bottom of your deck, and then add a spellcaster Dracotail monster from your graveyard back to your hand, which is of course incredibly important when you're trying to, keep a 5 mana in hand for your opponent's turn, to have an additional piece of disruption, which is pretty nice. Then the next one man, I really wanted to try and fit a second Pawn, because I think Pawn is great going second if you're able to fuse. But that's kind of, the condition behind this. Because Pawn, if fused, is the one that does pop a monster, which is great. Gives you, again, all these tools to, pick apart an opponent's board if you're going second, which is kind of cool. But sadly, Pawn is just, yeah, it's not the greatest one. But I really would like to play 2 just to have like more copies to like more consistently draw. But oh well. Pan's Graveyard effect is still pretty solid. If a fusion monster you control is destroyed while this is in your grave, you can special summon a Dracotail monster from your graveyard that is not a fusion. And then, of course, if fused, you can also set a Dracotail spell trap, but that's the one thing these all have in common. That it is it for the Dracotail names. These are, I guess, the usual 12 suspects. For playing this guy, man, I really don't like this guy. I honestly prefer the card that he can search over this guy. But yeah, I guess we're playing King of the Swamp. This is mainly here for some extra deck options. And of course can also grab you the polymerizations. I think I'm going to pick those out already. I'm playing 2 poly. Usually people are playing a 3-in-1 ratio, but I have really enjoyed just having more polys in testing because, as mentioned, the deck's main thing is that you need a way to fuse, and I felt like polymerization was a good thing to have in those situations. I think Khadija is also a good side grade for that, allows some Albaz shenanigans, but I think poly is very, very plain and simple. And also a lot harder to interact with than something that is monster based. So I have not hated 2 poly in testing. Then yeah, probably one of moving into the Dracotail spell traps, probably one of my favorite card designs ever. Keto Dracotail. This is Roller. You just add a Dracotail monster from your deck to your hand. But if your opponent controls a monster, you can also fusion summon a dragon or spellcaster fusion monster from the extra deck. Which gives this deck another push going second. Kind of what detracted OCG players from this deck fairly early, because this deck doesn't have a lot of pushes. It's you Ash Rahu, and then if your opponent has already committed their normal, they basically are left with 5 mana or hard drawn poly exactly to fuse and get into the game. And this helps the deck going second, which also kind of ties into why I do really like this deck. It's fairly competent going first, but has a lot of gas going second, which makes you less dependent on always finding the right amount of non-engine. And then yeah, the I guess infamous one that many people do like to refer to as branded fusion. I would rather not insult this card in that way. Wahoo, Rahu Dragontail. It allows you to fusion summon a Dracotail fusion monster, using monsters from hand or deck or field as material, but locks you into fusions. This is, I think the only fusion lock, correct me if I am wrong, in the whole engine, which is something to keep in mind. Oh, Malulu also locks you. That's good to know. Rarely comes up, funnily enough. But this is the main fusion lock. You gotta make your seals before activating this. So yeah, that's kind of it. But yeah, great cards. Allows you to get more names in rotation, which is the coolest thing. But of course a massive ash bait. And something that's also massive ash bait are both Dracotail traps. 1 flame, 1 horn. I think yeah, those are very common ratios. I've liked these are probably my favorite thing about the deck. Or one of my favorite things about the deck rather. Targeted spell negate and compulsory evacuation device for an attack position monster. But these also cycle. If you activate these, you can place a Dracotail card from your graveyard or banishment on the bottom of your deck, except themselves, and then draw a card. So you essentially flip the first one, just put something back, draw a card, flip the second one, put the first one back, and then you're kind of going. I think you can see what I'm putting down, which is pretty cool, especially since these are very solid pieces of interaction. Really like these cards, and yeah. Just pretty sad that you can Ash and Bell these. But, can't have everything. Yeah, sizable chunk of non-engine in this deck. I think we'll just cycle through these fairly quickly. 3 Ash. You want to load up on monster-based hand traps because most of your fusions need a monster in hand. That's why this deck does highly appreciate additional copies of monsters. Ash just kind of hits a wide range of decks. And is also, I guess, something you can discard into more Charmies, but this deck doesn't really care about those. 3 Ogre. I've been a huge fan of Ogre for a couple of formats by now, and I also don't own Fuwalos, so Plague-free Ogre, just, getting guys off the board feels like pretty good, especially now in a situation where, like, VS and Yummy have, like, central field spells. You can also just keep Yummy off of, like, Link ones, so they can't special their names. 3 Bell, this just kind of hits a lot of decks a bit. This could, of course, be where your Fuwalos is, but might pick those up at one day, especially now that I'm playing something this competent. But yeah, let's get these out of the way first before we talk about the rest. 3 Nibs. This deck is great with Nib, I think, especially with Nib now being like a very good card in the format. This deck really does appreciate how much Nib simplifies game states and how you can capitalize on that, because this deck already has a great ability to like break boards, but if you can put your opponent on like a less optimal setup, the deck does kind of just eat an opponent alive, which is also why the Charmies are great in this deck, because turn 1, even if you open them, you can still just fuse them out of the hand, because again, as mentioned earlier, all your fusions need at least a monster from your hand, so you don't mind opening those as much. 1 Magnamut, just, to have an additional copy of essentially each dragon in the name, and it's also just kind of cute. In my local testing group, there's like a guy on Mitsu August, so like maybe I can high roll with that. 3 Fenrir, this is something I added later in testing, mainly because I didn't really like Droll going first in this deck, because it turns off your trap draws, which is kind of unfortunate, and kind of inhibits like this deck's like follow-up potential. And Fenrir felt pretty good. Good into the Canine engine, because you just at the start of your turn pop down a Fenrir and tell your opponent to, send their Izuna to the face down banish pile. But it's also just like the fact that it replaces itself. It's a guy, so you kind of appreciate it. And the 42nd card is a singular triple tactics talent. I'd side Cold Buy in this. I think I'm not as afraid of Ash Blossom in this as most people would be. Because I think the deck is, like, fairly capable, even if, Rahu gets ashed on the average hand. Yeah. With that, let's move into the extra. Starting off with the Dracotail fusions, and the most important one, 3 Arthalion. I would like to get away with 2, but I think you do need 3. I think in the grind game, it's just very handy to just always have 1. Takes a Dracotail monster and 1 or more monsters in hand. And for each material used in hand, this guy can return a monster from field or graveyard to the hand, which is pretty great. Allows you to like cycle back resources turn 1. This is usually your first fusion. You cycle back like a couple of the materials. If you fuse with a 5 mana, you cycle that back, so you can fuse her again from hand. And trigger her effect if she is fused. And it's also a dragon. So this is half of a Hieratic Seal of Heavenly Spheres, which is a great card. You do want to be making in this deck. And then the Dracotail fusions have a shared effect similar to main deck monsters. If 2 or more monsters are sent to the graveyard at the same time while this is in your graveyard, you can special it, but it gets banished when it leaves the field. Gives the deck like a bit more OTK potential, and also just like a bit of like chump blocking potential. Your opponent's comboing off with like Link plays or something, and you just go Arthalion effect on grave, and suddenly there's a blue eyes on your field, which is pretty cool. Next up, 2 Gulamel. Since I'm on a pure version, I do have, I feel like, a bit more extra deck space than like a splash. But I think you can reasonably also cut the second one, especially since I am currently not on a Secreterion Dragon, which is something I still would probably have to acquire, even if I despise that card with every fiber of my being. Gulamel's great, because on field, when a Dracotail card or effect is activated, you can chain the Gulamel and pop a card on the field, but keep in mind this is a when effect, so it can miss timing, get chain blocked by your opponent, similar to a Paleo, for example. That's a good way to put it, I think. So if you go like Fuse, and then you go like, do the whole thing, you go like Lucius 1, Urgula 2, 5 mana 3, your opponent has a window of response. If your opponent has a response there, you can't Gulamel. If your opponent doesn't have a response there, good fucking job. You just netted yourself a pop, And then Gulamel, of course, also has the summon back effect, which Arthalion already had. And then for fusion options, we are on a tech I do really like from the, I think the list that top 8 the Paisley region. It was like the first one that I saw that was on this. Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon. You can make this do the King of the Swamp, because King of the Swamp can replace the Blue Eyes. And this is another way to recur your traps. As mentioned, your traps can get ashed and belled, which does mean, you know, one ash or bell can kind of throw a wrench in your, like, cycle of disruptions. Which is something the position you don't want to be in. Trust me, I've been there. And the Tyrant Dragon is just another way to recur your traps, because if the Tyrant Dragon connects, as, you know, people that are maybe familiar with Blue Eyes, modern Blue Eyes you can just reset a trap card, which is pretty cool. Guardian Chimera, another great tool for going second. This deck has access to, especially with like more polys. This I think does shine quite a bit, even if I think I'm most likely just making Arthalion into boards, looking back on it. Then the spooky boy, the Dark Dragoon. This guy can come up, but I guess, you know, on occasion it's like an Omni you can make. Mysterion the Dragon Crown, quite good into like Mitsu matchups or like Malice, because if a monster is special summoned by a monster effect, you can then banish a monster on a field that has the same type as that monster, which is pretty cool. And then something for Mululu, a Chaos Star Source Dragon. This takes a Light or Darkness Dragon monster and a Dragon monster, and then can pop cards on the field on summon. Equal to the number of light or dark monsters that are used as material, which is pretty cool. So yeah, with those out of the way, I guess now for like some real toolbox shit. I'm on a Typhon, just, you know, to have it going second. You can sometimes make it. I'm on a Goddess because one guy in my testing circle is on Punk. So yeah, gotta have a pep out, I guess. But this is probably something you usually just replace with something else. And then just plain and simple, the rest of the extra deck are a Splitter Knight and the Seals package of a Seals and a Spirit with Eyes of Blue. This has to be Spirit with Eyes of Blue because you need a way to turn your Lucius into a dragon. Because you essentially get to a position where you've made Arthalion and have like a normal summon to Lucius on the board. You turn the Lucius into Spirit, and then turn Spirit Arthalion into Seals before you go for Rahu and make the Gulamel in your like higher end turn 1 combos if you're not getting like, you know, disrupted, of course. But yeah, with all that out of the way, that is going to be it for my Dracotail list. I know, nothing too fancy. I think this is a fairly like boring list in every sense of the word. But yeah, with that being said, let me know in the comments down below if you're maybe playing a Splash. I think there's a couple interesting ones, like the Dragon Maid one. Personally, huge fan of the Primite cards, even if they don't like really aren't, you know, perfect for the deck. But I think that's neat because I do just like the Primite engine. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on the list, or maybe if you're, you know, playing a Splash, what your thoughts are on that. I'm really looking forward to like a post-Doom of Dimensions world where we have a light Dracotail name in the main deck, so you can play like the Shadow package, get like a bit more going second potential out of that. I think that could be pretty cool. But yeah, with that out of the way, I'll be thanking you guys very much for watching. I'll be seeing you guys again next time. But until then, goodbye.